Hey, g'day fellas. The new Five Nights at Freddy's Ruin DLC is finally out, and the question remains, does the Ruin DLC redeem Security Breach? No. No it doesn't, but hear me out. Ruin is leagues better than its base game, but that really ain't saying much. I don't think any DLC could redeem the mess that was Security Breach. Then again, the Ruin DLC is just not a good game in of itself, really. At the end of the day, the Ruin DLC falls into the same issue that a ton of horror games experience. It's a walking simulator. To traverse each level, all you gotta do is walk through a linear path and complete some baby brain level puzzles with virtually no threats. The main gameplay loop of this game are breaching the security nodes. At the beginning of the game, we receive a Vanny mask, which allows us to enter this AR world. This is where the security nodes appear. There's one parent node, and to deactivate it, we have to first deactivate the child nodes. Very simple, follow the red tendrils on the ground, they'll lead you to a child node. Make sure you regularly take off your mask, otherwise this guy'll show up. I'm gonna call him Randall, but he really ain't a threat, because you can just take off your mask and he disappears, making him obsolete. To deactivate the child node, hold E. Once all child nodes are deactivated, we can deactivate the parent node. To do so, complete this simple puzzle. They start off like this, and get to this. So, as you can tell, it takes a whole lot of skill. The other bits of gameplay from the AR world is this match the symbol shit on the camera monitors. They'll unseal a path so you can keep on walking. Speaking of which, you can also use the mask to phase through shit, so I guess that counts as gameplay. In the real world, you just gotta do this baby brain puzzle to unlock the next door, and sometimes use these camera monitors to lure the animatronics to a different location. But in chapter 1, Monty does jack shit. If he even bothers to show up, just run past him and he'll lose aggro. Man's got no legs, he ain't got that pace. The only time Monty got me was when I was trying to pet him. Chapter 2 takes place in the daycare. I was looking forward to this one. The daycare in the base game was one of the scarier moments. So, I was fucking delighted to find out that Sun/Moon don't do anything. Like, I'm serious. He poses zero threat. He stands still for the entire chapter. Then came Chapter 3 at the Monty Golf Catwalks. I don't think there's an animatronic in this chapter. The only threat are the slippery surfaces, which got me more than all the other animatronics combined. Chica's the threat of chapter 4 at the bakery. All you gotta do to her in this chapter is send her to camera 3. That's it, you can just walk on through. Chapter 5 is set in the salon. The main threat of this chapter is Chica once again. Roxy is actually a good guy, so she poses zero threats. And towards the end of the chapter, there is also one little segment with Monty. You have to do some simple platforming to avoid falling in the water where Monty is swimming around. But don't worry, even if you fall in, you can just get back up. And most of the time, he won't even bother to chase you, even if you're in the water. In Roxy Raceway of chapter 6, you gotta be real fucking dumb, or doing it on purpose to die to Roxy here. The only animatronic that posed a threat were the Music Men from chapter 7 in Bonnie Bowl. But that's mainly because they were a bit buggy. Essentially, there are a lot of Music Men, and you need to lure them to another area, because the child node will be where they are initially. But sometimes when you lure them, one or two might just decide to stick around, or Music Men that are supposed to be frozen decide they don't feel like being frozen. The next chapter was in Blast. You get one chase scene against Freddy, a chase sequence which is really hard to lose. And then in chapter 9, there was one chase sequence against the Mimic. So yeah, gameplay wise, the game just isn't it. It's just a whole lot of walking, sprinkled in with some shitty puzzles, and no tension. The hardest part of this game was the fucking Chica's Feeding Frenzy arcade machine, but more on that later. Well, let's move on to an improvement. The game's map is really cool. Because they made the Ruin DLC a linear path, they could focus on really fleshing out these areas, because Security Breach is just big and empty. And this applies to both the real world and AR world. They did a great job. Also, it just works for a horror game a lot better, now that everything's run down and destroyed. The sound design is also pretty good, though it never really pushed forward a feeling of dread. What I'm trying to say is that it was good, it just wasn't scary. But then comes the animatronic designs. I really like them. We've got old Randall over here. He's not scary at all, but I reckon his design's kinda funky, and it fits the whole cyberspace vibe. This is a jump scare, just kinda flashes on screen, not very scary. Dear Montgomery Gator is always getting the short end of the stick. Look at what they've done to him. I think the design is really neat, and he's got a really solid jump scare. But at the end of the day, I think he's more funny and cute than he is scary. Chica's also pretty sick. I really like the gooey cheese shit and the garbage bag in her gut. Pretty decent jump scare as well. I also really like Roxy. They just ripped off her face, and I reckon her endoskeleton looks really neat. Freddy has a wild design. He's missing his head, and instead he has a giant stomach mouth with a present inside. It's a bit too much to be particularly scary, but it looks really cool. Then comes Sun, Moon, and Eclipse. They already had a really solid creepy design from the base game, but now that they're broken and worn down, they look even better. Definitely some of my favorite FNAF designs. All the music men look incredible. Some of the best models in the game. There are 3 different variants and they all look sick. Plus the jump scare is probably the best in the game, and because of their small stature, they can really sneak up on you. And the final design worth noting is the Mimic, the final boss of the game. Its normal design is pretty meh, it's just a weird looking endo. But if you unlock the secret ending, which I accidentally got on my initial playthrough, it has a different design, and it is one of my favorite designs in all of FNAF. The cloth animal suit is fucking fantastic, and easily one of the scariest. Before this, one of my favorite designs was Glitch Trap. While I absolutely hated his concept, the cloth stitched together suit is really creepy. This Mimic design has the same effect, and the glowing red eyes peeking out of the mouth just brings it all together. So, we play as Cassie, a little girl that seems to be friends with Gregory. Apparently Gregory called us to meet at the Pizzaplex, but when we get there, he's nowhere to be found. We find a walkie-talkie, and it turns out Gregory is on the receiving end. He's trapped below the Pizzaplex, and he needs your help. We get given this Vanny mask, which connects us to the AR network as we travel throughout the Pizzaplex, deactivating security nodes. Of which, the final security node is Roxy, strangely enough. However, she's the only animatronic that is passive towards us. We deactivate her and make our way down to the FNAF 6 location, and then travel even further below. We find ourselves at the Mixer's security modem router thingo, and finally deactivate it. We break through this concrete slab to make it to where Gregory has been telling us to go, but as it turns out, it was the Mimic replicating Gregory's voice. Gregory wasn't in the Pizzaplex anymore. He and Vanessa already escaped. We go through the final chase sequence and escape into an elevator, but Gregory tells us he can't risk letting it escape and drops the fucking elevator. What a cunt. It's nothing fancy. I feel the DLC mainly serves to rework / retcon / clear up story elements about the base game. In terms of driving the franchise forward, it just adds the addition of another protagonist in Cassie, and a new antagonist in the Mimic. In regards to Cassie, we learn that the DLC takes place on her birthday, and that exactly 1 year ago, none of her friends showed up to her party because she's a loser, but that's where she met and became friends with Gregory. Also, her father happens to be a Faz technician that was around to see Glamrock Bonnie get scrapped, and whose favorite animatronic was also Bonnie. It's mainly through the Easter eggs and hidden secrets that we get some answers, though it's not exactly clear. You unlock the secret Brazil ending if you don't listen to Gregory's directions in the final chase. You come across a Fredbear and Friends cardboard pop-up, and if you put on your mask, you see an uncanny recreation of the base game's Princess Quest ending. This seems to confirm that the Princess Quest ending is the canon one from Security Breach, but there's more evidence to back this up. Firstly, in Vanny's hideout, we find the Princess Quest arcade machine, and it looks pretty fucking beaten to me. Also, there are 8 real-world collectibles that are comics drawn by Gregory. There is one for each of the base game's endings, except the Princess Quest ending. But then they throw a curveball like this blob Easter egg, and questions like, if the Afton ending isn't canon, how did the Pizzaplex collapse? In any case, it gives some clues to solve the new overarching mystery, and that's MatPat's job, not mine. After all is said and done, this game's story feels a lot like it wasn't intentional, like it was made to retcon most of Security Breach after getting so much negative attention. This is a FNAF game, so of course, we have some secrets. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 secret endings, the Brazil ending and the Scooper ending. Both are really cool and pretty easy to get. Then there's the Glamrock Bonnie Easter egg. Honestly, it's pretty underwhelming. In order to get this Easter egg, you have to deactivate every wash bot in the facility. This sucks in of itself because there are a lot of them, and unlike the base game, you can't backtrack. And even if you manage to deactivate them all, good chance it's bugged. All this work, and you get to see a busted up Glamrock Bonnie. There are 4 wash bots around him, and deactivating those will make his eyes turn off. I just wish it was a bit more. We can also finally play the Chica's Feeding Frenzy arcade game, which was mentioned in the base game. This arcade machine is, no kidding, the hardest part of this fucking game. It took me like 2 hours before I could beat level 20, and beating the game rewards you with Chica's voice box. You can plug it back into her, and she delivers a line. Yep, that's it. Chica's Feeding Frenzy, like the arcade game, was awesome. It was challenging, it was fun, it was good times. The voice box Easter egg, on the other hand, is incredibly disappointing. There's also a Monty Golf machine still, with a new course. It's Monty Golf, it's cool, but I don't particularly care for it. When you make it to the FNAF 6 location, we have Candy Cadet, which is genius. The base game pretty much says that it is the FNAF 6 location, but had no identifying features of the pizzeria. Everyone had Candy Cadet, so we get hit with that nostalgia, and it's just really cool to see. By feeding him some Faz tokens you can find hidden around endgame locations, he'll tell you a story.
Now I will tell you a story about a mother and a little boy who lived alone in a cabin in the dark woods. So I opened the door.
Great Easter egg, we love Candy Cadet. There's a room with baby plushies which laugh and disappear, which is neat. A little glimpse of the blob, and some other minor things which are like, hey, that was cool, I guess. Welp, moving on. There's none. This isn't a horror game. No. Look, I appreciate the effort Steelwall have put into fixing this game and trying to make something different, but I just didn't have that fun of a time playing it. Again, walking simulator. It felt like I was just casually meandering my way through this game, and every once in a while I'd see something and be like, hey, that probably has lore implications. Once again, the most fun I had with this game, as well as the most challenging part of the game, was Chica's Feeding Frenzy. But of course, you're all free to like this game and have your own opinions. These are just mine. Well, that was the Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach Ruin DLC. I mean, it's aight. At the end of the day, as long as you had Security Breach, it's free, so who's complaining?